I'm Hadley, and I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, in a family that seemed like something out of a high-end magazine. On the surface, we had everything: an enormous house, luxurious cars, and a chain of boutique hotels that made it look like we were living the American dream. But behind closed doors, things were different. My parents always had a favorite, and it wasn't me. My younger brother, Lucas, received everything on a silver platter: private schools, sleek SUVs, even a penthouse apartment despite barely working a day in his life. As for me, I was the one who was told to figure things out on my own. I had to fight for every little thing. I worked 2 jobs throughout college, graduated with honors in finance, and built my way into a successful career as a financial planner. I thought that by proving myself, I could earn their recognition. But no matter how many long nights I put in or deals I sealed, they never saw me. The only person who truly noticed me was my grandfather. He was the one who had created our family's wealth. A retired investment banker who had made smart real estate moves long before I was born. He set up a trust fund with $5 million that was supposed to be divided between Lucas and me once we came of age. He was fair and kind, someone who never played favorites. One morning, everything changed. I was getting ready for a major business trip to Chicago, a chance to pitch to a big client that could skyrocket my career. Suddenly, my phone rang. It was my mom, her voice trembling as though she had been crying. "Hadley, honey, it's your grandfather," she said, barely holding it together. "He's had a bad fall. We need you here." My heart sank. My grandfather meant everything to me. He had always been my support system, the one who cheered me on when no one else did. Without a second thought, I canceled my flight, rearranged my meetings, and rushed to his house in Buckhead, my stomach a bundle of nerves. When I walked through the door, I froze. There he was, sitting in his favorite leather armchair, reading a newspaper, looking perfectly fine. No bruises, no bandages, just a cup of coffee in his hand. He looked up at me, confused. "Hadley, what are you doing here?" he asked, setting the paper down. I blinked, trying to process what was happening. "Mom called. She said you fell and were badly hurt." His face darkened, and he leaned forward, rubbing his temples. "She told you that?" he said, his voice low. My chest tightened. Something was off. "Really? What's going on?" I stammered. "She asked me to lie, Hadley," he sighed heavily, like he had been carrying this weight for years. "She said it would keep the peace if you stayed behind. But I told her no, I wouldn't do that to you." My knees went weak. My own mom had made up a story about my grandfather's health just to keep me away? I sank into the couch, my mind racing. "She said it was a family vacation," I whispered. "The Bahamas. I thought we were all going." His eyes softened, filled with a mixture of sadness and anger. "They never intended to take you, sweetheart." My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, my hands trembling, and opened Instagram. There it was, a photo of my entire family on a white sandy beach, smiling, holding cocktails. My parents, Lucas, aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone except me. Lucas had posted it with a smug caption: "Nothing beats family time in paradise." My breath caught in my throat. I was supposed to be there, laughing with them, part of the moment. Instead, they had lied and used my grandfather's name to trick me. The betrayal hit me hard, like a blade twisting deep into my chest. I gripped my phone so tightly that my knuckles turned white, fighting back tears. They thought I would just accept it like always. But this time they were wrong. That night, sleep didn't come. I sat on my grandfather's couch, the glow of my phone illuminating the dark living room as I scrolled through those Bahamas photos again. Each one hurt more than the last. My mom's arm around Lucas, my dad raising a glass, everyone laughing as if everything was perfect. They had planned this behind my back, used my grandfather's name to keep me away, and left me thinking I was helping him while they were off partying. My hands shook as I zoomed in on Lucas's smug grin. How could they do this? My grandfather sat beside me, his face etched with worry. "Hadley," he said, his voice calm but heavy, "there's something you need to know." My heart raced as he reached into his desk and pulled out a thick folder, handing it to me. "This is everything I've been tracking," he said. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the cover. I knew whatever was inside would change everything. When I opened it, my world tilted. Bank statements, trust fund reports, legal papers, pages and pages of evidence that my parents had been stealing from me for years. They were supposed to divide the trust fund between you and Lucas, he said, his voice tense. But they've been taking your share, piece by piece. I scanned the documents, my eyes locking on specific transactions. $1.50 for Lucas's private school, $100,000 for his sports car, even more for his failed business ideas. My money, the trust fund, valued at $5 million and meant for both of us, had mostly gone to him. It felt like I couldn't breathe. For all those years I'd worked late, saved every penny, while they handed Lucas my future as if it was nothing. There's more, my grandfather said, his voice quiet. They're planning to give the hotel chain to Lucas. Your dad's just finalizing the paperwork. I stared at him, my mind racing. The Harris Hotels, our family's legacy, the business I dreamed of helping run, was supposed to be shared. They're cutting me out completely? I whispered. He nodded, his jaw set. I handed your dad control years ago, hoping he'd do right by both of you. I was wrong. The room spun. I thought of every late night at work, every client I brought in, all the sacrifices I made to prove I was worthy of this family. They'd been planning to erase me from the start. My grandfather's hand found mine, grounding me. You don't have to let this happen, Hadley, he said. You're stronger than they think. A spark ignited in my chest. It wasn't just anger. It was something colder, sharper. Determination. They thought I'd stay quiet like I always had, but I was done being their doormat. I called Aunt Julia, the one family member who'd always had my back. She'd left the family business years ago, tired of my parents' shady dealings. A corporate lawyer with a sharp mind and sharper tongue. The kind of person who didn't tolerate nonsense. When she arrived, she looked through the papers, nodding. This is fraud, Hadley, she said. They've been siphoning your inheritance. And if they're moving money to offshore accounts, they're planning to disappear. Probably to the Caribbean. A chill ran down my spine. They weren't just stealing. They were planning to vanish with what was left. We can stop them, Julia said, her eyes fierce. But we need to act fast. I nodded, my mind racing. For years, I'd swallowed my pain, hoping my parents would finally see me as their daughter, not just the one they could ignore. But now I saw them for what they really were. People who'd rather destroy me than share what was mine. What's our first move? I asked. Julia leaned forward, a glint in her eye. We hit them where it hurts, their reputation. A smile tugged at my lips. My parents were obsessed with their perfect image. If we tore that down, they'd have nowhere to hide. The next morning, I sat with Aunt Julia and my grandfather, phone in hand, ready to light a match under my parents' flawless facade. They'd built their lives on appearing perfect, successful, respected pillars of the elite. But it was all a lie, and I was done letting them hide behind it. I opened Instagram, my fingers hovering over the screen. Lucas's latest post stared back at me. Him on a yacht, drink in hand, with the caption, "Living the dream with family." My stomach churned. That dream was built on my stolen future. I typed, hands steady despite the fire burning in my chest. Funny how my parents lied about my grandfather's health to keep me from our family vacation. Funnier still how they took my $5 million trust fund and the Harris Hotels meant for me and Lucas and gave it all to him. They thought I'd never find out. I hit post and held my breath. Within minutes, notifications flooded my phone. Likes, comments, shares, friends, distant cousins, even my parents' business partners were stunned, bombarding the post with questions. Is this true? What's going on with Harris Hotels? The truth was out, and it spread like wildfire. My phone rang almost immediately. Lucas's name flashed on the screen. Hadley, what the hell? His voice was low, like he was hiding. Take that post down. You're making Mom and Dad look awful. I let the silence stretch, savoring his discomfort. Awful. I said, my voice calm but sharp. They lied to me, Lucas. They stole my money, my future. And you went along with it. He stammered. You don't get it. It's complicated. No, I shot back. It's simple. You took what was mine. Next came my mom's voice, cold as ice. Hadley, delete that post. You're embarrassing us. I let out a laugh, bitter and raw. Embarrassing you? You fabricated grandfather's injury, handed Lucas my inheritance, and plotted to give him control of the business. If anyone's embarrassed, it's you. She huffed in response. We did what was best for the family. Lucas was ready to handle that money, not you. Her words stung, but I had reached my limit. I wasn't going to let them hurt me anymore. You're wrong, I replied. And soon, you'll realize just how wrong you are. By the evening, the fallout was inevitable. Reporters began digging into Harris Hotel's finances. Employees, once too afraid to speak, started revealing stories of unpaid wages and questionable dealings. My grandfather reached out to old business contacts, and investors started pulling back, unnerved by the scandal. Aunt Julia and I filed legal papers to freeze the transfer of the hotel chain to Lucas. The paperwork wasn't final, but it was nearly there. Too close. If we could prove fraud, we could put a stop to it. That night, my grandfather handed me one last document. His eyes studied me carefully. This is the original contract I signed with your dad, he said. It granted him control of Harris Hotels, but there was a clause no one had noticed. I read it, my heart pounding in my chest. It stated that if dishonesty or misconduct was proven, control could be revoked. This is our ace, the key to dismantling their plan, he added. I looked up, a fire burning inside me. We've got them, I said. Julia nodded, her smile fierce. Let's finish this. The next morning, I walked into Harris Hotel's downtown office, the contract tucked securely under my arm. My heart raced, but my steps were steady. For years, I had felt like an outsider in my own family, but today, I was taking back what was mine. I pushed open the door to my dad's corner office. He and my mom were frantically stuffing papers into a shredder. They froze when they saw me. My dad's face flushed with anger. You don't belong here, Hadley, he snapped. I raised the contract, my voice calm. Actually, I do. His eyes narrowed, but I saw a flicker of fear in them. I took a step closer. You missed something in this contract, Dad. The clause that says, if you're caught lying or stealing, you lose everything. He grabbed the paper, scanning it, his jaw tightening with every word. My mom gripped the desk, her face pale. Hadley, let's talk about this, she said, her voice trembling. Talk. I raised an eyebrow. Where was the talking when you gave Lucas my trust fund? When you planned to hand him the business? Just then, Lucas burst through the door, red-faced and out of breath. You're destroying everything, Hadley. Why can't you just let it go? I turned to him, my voice steady. Let it go. You've lived off my money, Lucas. You took my future without a second thought. He threw his hands up in the air. You're just bitter. I stepped closer, locking my eyes on his. Bitter? No. I'm done letting you all walk all over me. The office door swung open again. 2 federal agents walked in, followed by Aunt Julia and my grandfather. My dad's face drained of color. What is this? He yelled. One of the agents, a tall woman in a sharp suit, spoke. Mr. Harris, we have evidence of financial fraud and offshore transfers. You and your wife are under arrest. My mom gasped, clutching my dad's arm. Do something, she hissed. But he was frozen, still holding the contract in his hand. I pulled out another folder, filled with bank records, trust fund statements, and proof of every dollar they had stolen. This, I said, shows you took $5 million that was mine. My dad's eyes burned with fury. You think you've won? He spat. I met his gaze without flinching. I'm not trying to win. I'm taking back what's mine. Lucas stared at me, his mouth agape, finally understanding that the game was over. As the agents cuffed my parents, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time, I wasn't the invisible daughter. I was in control. The weeks that followed were a blur, but they changed everything. The court case was swift. Aunt Julia presented the evidence expertly, exposing every lie and every stolen dollar. The judge ruled that the transfer of the hotel chain to Lucas was fraudulent, null, and void. My parents' attempt to rewrite the family legacy collapsed. What came next was something I hadn't expected. The court awarded me full ownership of Harris Hotels. The business I had been excluded from, the one they had tried to steal, was now mine. My parents faced prison for financial fraud, and without their money or influence, Lucas was left to scramble. He sent me a text, a half-hearted apology, trying to worm his way back into my life. I didn't respond. Some betrayals cut too deep, and I was done carrying the weight of his entitlement. My grandfather pushed for the recovery of the trust funds, but most of the $5 million had vanished, funneled into Lucas's life or hidden offshore. Still, the hotels were worth more than just money. They represented something more important. A chance to build something honest. Taking over wasn't easy. My dad had left behind a mess, shady deals, unpaid staff, and a toxic culture. One morning, I walked into Harris Hotel's headquarters, not as the overlooked daughter, but as the owner. Employees who had once avoided me now met my gaze with cautious hope. I got to work, paying back wages, setting up a scholarship fund for employees' children, and opening the books for full transparency. Slowly, trust began to grow. The hotel started to feel like a place where people actually wanted to work, not just had to. One evening, I sat with my grandfather on the rooftop of our flagship hotel, the Atlanta skyline sparkling below us. He sipped his coffee, a quiet smile playing on his lips. "You know," he said, "I always knew you had it in you." I tilted my head. "What's that?" He leaned back, his eyes warm. "The strength to turn their lies into your truth." I laughed softly, the weight of years of doubt lifting. He was right. They tried to break me, to erase me, but all they did was show me what I was capable of. I wasn't just surviving their betrayal. I was thriving. Tio, to everyone who's followed this story, thank you. You've been with me through the hurt, the fight, and the moment I took back my life. If this touched you, if it made you feel the sting of betrayal or the fire of fighting back, hit that subscribe button and join us. Every story we share is about facing the truth, reclaiming what's yours, and building something better. Keep carving your own path, and I'll see you next time.